If you have the first program in this series, Four-Wheel Drive Techniques, you'll already be familiar with the basic skills of driving your Suzuki off-road. Making Tracks has been produced to show how you, your family and friends can enjoy making a true hobby of your Suzuki by driving in trials and driving green lanes. The program is made up of 4 parts. Part 1 deals with technical advice and vehicle preparation for driving trials and green lanes. The second section looks at advanced driving techniques and the approach to trials. In the third part, we follow a trial for RTVs, road tax vehicles, which are sometimes called non-damaging trials. And finally, we go driving green lanes with some sound advice from the All-Wheel Drive Club's Rights of Way officer. So let's take a look at the most important part of trials and green lane weekends, the vehicle preparation. We'll start underneath. If you haven't any 4-post ramps or a pit, then after jacking up the car, put axle stands under all 4 wheels. We're assuming that the vehicle has been regularly serviced and well maintained. Starting from the rear of the vehicle, the suspension and drive chain should be looked over. The shackle bushes should be inspected for wear and corrosion, and the shackle pin retaining nuts also checked. All of the following should be thoroughly inspected and any faults corrected. The U-bolts and their associated retaining nuts. The mounting plate, shock absorber bushes and pins, and the shocker itself. Brake pipe unions and the brake pipes. They must be visually and manually checked for corrosion along their length, and their support brackets tried for security. The differential filler and drain plugs should be checked for any oil leaks. Objects which project beyond the normal body line should be given the once-over and possibly removed before the trial. Things like the rear number plate, fog lamp, and, if it's fitted, the tow hitch, also the tow rope shackle point and bolts. There should be no leaks from the rear differential. Check the gasket seal, the front oil seal, and make sure that there's no undue play in the prop shaft UJs. The prop shaft expansion joint dust gaiter should be free of splits and wear. At the same time, the transfer box filler and drain plugs can be checked for possible leaks. Flexible brake pipes and their union connectors must be carefully examined. No pipes should overhang unduly, as this could mean they might be snagged and broken when driving over rough ground. The exhaust pipe should be secure in its mountings. It's particularly important that the flexible brake pipes around the steering mechanism are inspected, and the ball joint seals, rod ends, tie rods, drag rod, steering damper, and knuckle joints should all be checked for wear, maladjustment or distortion. Make sure that the battery acid level is correct, that its terminals are tight, and that it's fixed securely. And as the master brake cylinder reservoir is close to the battery, check its level at the same time too. All ignition leads should be traced and pushed home tight to ensure good connections to the distributor, the coil and the plugs. Make sure that the jack is well tied in its position, and if you're expecting to meet up with deep mud or water, put the air filter into the summer position to reduce the risk of water being drawn in at the lower intake level. All fuel line connectors and pipes should be inspected for cracks or wear, and the coolant hoses examined. Make sure that the expansion and windscreen washer bottle levels are correct. Check the engine oil level in the usual way, and also rock the steering rod back and forth to see there's no unwanted free play. Fan belt tension needs checking, and the Bowden cables should be free, clean and undamaged. Inside the vehicle, inspect the seat belt webbing for wear and make sure the anchorage points are secure. The sills can be protected from any possible damage by fitting the standard accessory. It's easily fixed on with 3 bolts in all, 1 in front and 2 at the rear. All the lights on the vehicle should be tested, including main and dipped headlamps and the rear fog lamp and hazard warning lights. All of the lights can be protected from potential damage by fitting individual grille guards or bull bars. We recommend that you keep a suitable fire extinguisher in the cab. When you get to the off-road site, any projecting accessories should be removed from the vehicle, always remembering, of course, to replace them when you return to the major roads. If you're driving green lanes, the car must, by law, be fitted with a fog lamp. It's also worth folding the wing mirrors into the body to stop them catching on branches. There are a few items which you should take with you for your own safety and convenience. These are a good first aid kit, elastic strapping or light nylon rope for securing loose items, a small wood saw, a jemmy bar, a small axe and club hammer, a releasing agent such as WD-40, strong working gloves, a light strong nylon rope, insulating tape, a tyre pressure gauge, a strong reliable torch, a spare fan belt, and of course the first aid kit. For green lanes you should also take a strong hand winch, nylon webbing for protecting trees if you're winching against them, a well-equipped toolbox and spare fuel. All the items should be fastened down in the rear of the vehicle. Tyres, of course, have to be carefully chosen for off-road use. So we asked Mr. Hayward of Dunlop UK to explain the design of Suzuki's standard multi-purpose tyre.
The standard tyre fitted to the Suzuki is the Dunlop SP44J. As with any tyre, it's a compromise between on and off-road performance. A lot of Suzukis spend time on the road, and the tyre's got to be acceptable under those circumstances. But it's also designed to give a good performance in snow or in light mud conditions. The tread pattern on the Dunlop SP44J is essentially a block pattern. The tread blocks can give a mechanical bite into the mud or snow or whatever you're driving on. There is an angle across the tyre so that they also give a lateral bite into the mud, into the snow, all onto dry tarmac, so that you get lateral stability and a good steering response. The slots in the middle of each block are there to suck up any water on wet roads, so that the tread rubber itself then has the chance to bite onto dry tarmac. The shoulder part of the tyre is slightly rounded, because otherwise you'd get very high noise levels on a tarmac surface. But the gap between them and the rigidity of the blocks again gives a mechanical bite into soft ground so that you get a good tractive force. The tread grooves are fairly wide, not only to allow water to flow through them on wet surfaces, but so that when you get off-road into muddy conditions, the tread pattern has a chance to clear itself of whatever mud, snow, debris it collects as it goes through the contact patch.
Stuart McCutcheon of the All-Wheel Drive Club set out some typical trial sections for us and demonstrated some of the advanced driving skills required for this type of terrain. Driving your Suzuki over difficult ground requires a reasonable degree of throttle control. Before attempting this type of terrain, which causes axle twists, select low ratio first gear And at all times, be sure to wear your seat belt. Any type of trial section should be walked and carefully inspected to determine the state of the ground and also the route you want to take between the course markers. Engage first gear, low ratio, and pull away in a controlled manner, remembering to keep your foot well away from the clutch. Control of the power and motion of the vehicle is by means of the throttle and, if necessary, the brake. On no account should you drive with your foot riding the clutch pedal, because if it should suddenly disengage, it would lead to a loss of drive and therefore loss of control. Although this particular type of terrain doesn't involve any long steep gradients, you must keep going. In order to achieve this, sufficient momentum is required at the right moments. In this case, diagonally adjacent wheels are sometimes off the ground at the same time. This is known as an axle twist. When the wheels make contact, traction is regained. The throttle should be eased off and the vehicle allowed to continue to the next hump at a little more than tick-over speed. With the vehicle constantly rolling and pitching, it is difficult to control the throttle, and also the steering wheel will kick from one direction to the other. The wheel should be held firmly but not tightly and should be fed through the hands, making sure that your thumbs are kept clear of the spokes of the wheel. Always drive in a smooth and controlled manner, making sure that the vehicle's speed and direction are totally under your command. Steep downward slopes should be taken in first gear low, remembering to keep your foot well away from the clutch. Here again, it's important to squeeze the throttle a little at the bottom of the travel to carry the vehicle round to the left and out of the mud in the hole at the bottom. If you're attempting to use the brakes whilst going downhill, avoid constant pressure, as this will lock the wheels and cause the vehicle to swerve and slip. If the brakes have to be used, it's better to use gentle stabs on the pedal so that the traction is maintained. Inevitably, things can go wrong, and if you do need to recover a vehicle, it's imperative to make sure that the handbrake is on before pulling the vehicle upright. The recovery rope should be attached to a secure fixing. In this instance, it was attached by means of a shackle onto the rear spring. Once the vehicle is righted, pull it well clear in case of spilt petrol, oil or battery acid.
Can you pull it out onto the grass away from the petrol? Right? Pull it further out away from the petrol. Yeah, that'll do.
All major components of the engine should be visually checked for damage before any attempt is made to restart the vehicle. Be sure that the engine has not lost its oil and that there are no petrol leaks. On any recovery, think very carefully about the situation and then think again before righting the vehicle. More damage can be done by a thoughtless and hurried recovery than by the roll itself. In this case, the only damage was a broken indicator lamp. When you're travelling up or down a gully, be constantly aware of the vehicle's angle and try to avoid trees, bushes, boulders or stumps on the side walls. Any of these could throw you off balance. As mentioned previously, the Suzuki electrics and the air intake are positioned high up under the bonnet. Even so, when you're fording or driving in deep water, maintain a slow, steady forward motion to avoid making a large bow wave, as this could be picked up by the cooling fan and sprayed back all over the engine. After leaving the water, always test your brakes. On side slopes, move forward in a controlled manner and, as before, make careful use of the clutch and throttle. If you feel the vehicle starting to lift too much on one side and suspect a possible roll, quickly steer the vehicle downhill and squeeze the throttle gently until stability is regained. If you fail to make a gradient and come to a stop, apply the handbrake, select reverse, release the brake and let the clutch out at the same time, steering the vehicle backwards down the slope. Above all, don't panic by dipping the clutch or locking the brakes. Very often deep tracks become covered in vegetation and you may get stuck in it. It is possible to self-recover in some circumstances by selecting first and reverse gears alternately, rocking the vehicle quickly back and forth, and at the same time turning the steering wheel from side to side in an attempt to find that extra grip on the sides of the ruts. Eventually you may self-recover. However, it is easier on yourself, your car and its transmission, axles and tyres if there's a second vehicle around. Using a good quality rope, attach it to a strong towing point. Make sure everyone stands back, so if the rope should snap, it won't cause any injuries. Take up all strain in the rope and try to drive the car in the direction of recovery. The tow vehicle should then pull forward and the car come free. If not, then a slight snatch on the rope by the tow vehicle usually does the trick. If this doesn't work, then the stuck vehicle must be winched out of trouble. When you are free, make sure to check all brake pipes under the vehicle. Off-road events generally take place over a weekend, and in most cases the participants camp at the site, which sure helps the atmosphere. Once you've found your spot and pitched your tent, you must sign on at the club control unit. Every entrant receives a scorecard, which is given to a marshal at the start of each section.
Yes, please, love. Have I got to do it all on mine?
Why haven't we got any ID cards, young man? Do it properly.
You want to see the ID card, do you?
Yep.
You'll like that.
Oh, I like that.
All vehicles entering must be checked by the appointed scrutineer to ensure that they come within the safety specifications.
It's all clean, what's happening? I've been using it off-road all week, actually. It's amazing. What's all this, Stuart? Not a proper motor. Oh, it's all dirty under there. Failed. You want the steering rock? Yeah. Yeah. Throttle Greenlanes, pretty well. Yeah. Standard.
Before the start of the trial, all entrants attend a briefing, usually given by the clerk of the course. The purpose of this is to explain some of the sections, how the trial is to be run, what classes of vehicle are involved, and a few do's and don'ts. Then it's on to the first trial section. Everyone walks the section first, and of course those lucky enough to be at the back of the queue will have the opportunity of learning from others' mistakes. In this trial, the experts and road taxed vehicles drove the same sections, but the specialised vehicles were expected to clear more gates than the standard road cars. The events are always well attended, with the entrants taking every opportunity to observe previous contestants and discuss their errors. Lots of power is not always the solution. There's no shortage of variety. Some sections are in very dense woodland, whilst others will be completely in the open. The last section in this particular trial showed that it isn't always the specialist modified vehicles that finish. Careful observation, correct approach and line always pay off. At the end of the day comes the prize giving. As this trial was a joint experts and road taxed vehicle event, the experts, not surprisingly, took first and second overall. But the standard vehicles weren't that far behind on points. Stuart McCutcheon came in second position in our completely standard Suzuki SJ410. At the end of the day, it's time for a real burn-up with a grand barbecue.
Put that camera away. Yeah, proper plate.
Have you been watching the motor cars today?
Yeah, thanks.
Have you?
They are racing today.
No, they are tomorrow though, aren't they? Are you looking forward to that?
Yes, I've had to walk around the cold.
Have you?
And as the sun and the wine go down, serious last-minute vehicle customising takes place, with the final artistic touches being added to a vehicle in readiness for the next day's competition safari. A competition safari is a fast off-road race. Times are taken at the start and finish for each competitor, and as the day progresses and the laps go by, the vehicles get faster. Again, the events are well attended and just about every type of vehicle can be seen at the site. Not just four-wheel drive, but two-wheel drive buggies as well, and all in a good-humoured and enjoyable atmosphere. And so we leave the speed, the roar and the dust of the competition safari for the quiet of the countryside and green laning. Green lanes are exactly what they sound like, unmade roads and lanes of ancient origin. Some were originally drovers' tracks, whilst others are all that remain of Roman roads and highways. The advent of tarmac saw many of the old roads disappear. The All-Wheel Drive Club held a Green Lane weekend in Hampshire, which was organised by the club's Rights of Way officer, Mike Scott, a man of very definite opinions as to the aim of the club with regard to green lanes and a superb knowledge of their history and lore. The idea of the weekend was to survey, clear and repair as many lanes as possible.
Basically, in England and Wales, there are 100,000 miles of public rights-of-way. Over 5,000 miles of those, there are vehicular rights. Many of them date back to 1189, which is time immemorial. A lot of them are ancient drove roads. Many of them are of great historical interest. And the All-Wheel Drive Club has members who are interested in keeping these roads open. What does happen, of course, is that if the roads aren't used, then the landowners, through whose countryside they run, will tend to try and close them because, of course, as we know, we live in a small, overcrowded island, and access to the countryside, whereas the chap in the town likes it, the chap in the country who makes his living from the country isn't too happy about it.
How many lanes do you expect to survey this weekend?
I would say in Hampshire alone, we have got 544. That is a total, not mileage, that is the total number of green lanes we have in Hampshire. I would have hoped by the end of the weekend to have done a good 2/3 of the lanes.
And what sort of advice have you given them?
I've had to be extremely careful because green roads, access to the countryside, is a fairly hot political potato at the moment. The law on green lanes is fairly complicated, so I've had to tell the chaps, when they go into an area to survey it, of any problems that they might encounter. They've been told, and they so far have actually obeyed it, that they must make absolutely sure that the lane they are travelling along is legal. If there are any obstructions or any difficulties, they report back to the control caravan here on the radio or telephone on the cellular phone. We then go out to find what the problem is because we know the area and we know the law and how to approach the matter of obstructions.
How should a newcomer go about green laning?
It's a difficult question to answer. Green laning has always been something that you don't talk about. It's something you do by yourself and the general public think it rather eccentric to do. There's nothing to stop anybody driving a green lane because a green lane is exactly the same as driving down the M3. You have got full vehicular rights on it. Obviously the vehicle has got to be taxed, insured, MOT'd because they are public rights of way. What a new person must do is firstly buy an ordnance survey map, make sure that the lanes he travels are actually rights of way. It can get very involved by having to ask the county council, but if he follows the green lane symbol on the ordnance survey map, in 99 cases out of 100, that is definitive proof that there is a right of way.
And should they take any special equipment on these expeditions?
If you're a total novice, I would not suggest that you go by yourself. Always take a second vehicle. Always take a rope, so if the vehicle does get bogged, you can self-recover.
Out on a lane, it's surprising what you can learn of local history and present attitudes to the rights of way from some of the locals. Should you meet anyone en route, you should stop and be prepared to explain your presence in a polite and courteous manner.
Yeah, this is because they used to use this.
There we go. Up to your
From the old cows. That's
That's
it.
up there.
Yeah. Well, the chap who lived here, who I took over from, was here during the war. They used to be, when they're training here for tanks, because the tanks in would travel up here off to Salisbury Plains. Yeah. So this was a tank track. So it was well cleared.
Yeah.
And I think, it must be about 10 years ago, the council actually bought a bulldozer in to shift it, so people could still go it. Now, I'm not against ramblers, they can go where they like. But I mean, I don't see why people have to walk through Stinging Necklace when, if it belongs to the council and they've got machinery that could just cut a strip.
There's a general code of conduct worth remembering when driving green lanes. Always check that the path you're on is a green lane and not a bridleway by looking it up in a definitive map of the area. Always check unknown ground by walking it first. Make sure your vehicle and yourself are well prepared for the day and that you are road legal. Take with you the spares and tools suggested earlier in the programme. Travel in small groups of 2 to 3 vehicles. Drive slowly in second or third gear, low ratio. Give way to pedestrians, horses, farm stock and motorcyclists. Make a note of the roads and their condition when you drive them. Note the map reference and the date in a diary. If the lanes were wet and muddy, be sure to clean off your vehicle lights and number plates before returning to the main highways. Always remember, keep the country code. Use good common sense and thought for others. Avoid confrontation. And enjoy your green lanes. Enjoy your trials. Enjoy your Suzuki.